Wordplay, no longer afraid. Activation of my DNA. My energy is grade A. Stepped into the gateway. On the other side was a payday.
Alright, y'all, let's get it. Baby. Hey, about to get majestic. Alright, so look, here's what we got in store for you today. We gonna break down the movie Elios. For those who are, first off, again, quick discretion. If you haven't seen the movie, just like the video, so it goes into your like playlist. Then go watch the video, go watch the movie, and then come back and then watch the video. Watch the podcast, baby. All right, let's get it. It's about to get majestic. So, Elios is a movie. Well, honestly, I feel like I'm probably gonna have to watch that movie a couple of more times before I actually have completely broken down every symbolic meaning, every hidden meaning, every true meaning behind the movie itself. It's a lot. It's packed with a lot of gems, an extreme amount of gems, you know. So the overall message of the story of the movie is you're never alone. So what's going on is basically we've got a kid named Elios. He's lost his parents. He's his aunt took over the guardianship of him, so that's basically who cares for him. That's his caretaker. He is basically initiated into his path, the journey that he's going to take for his life on Earth. He witnesses and has some pretty abnormal experiences compared to the normal human being. He goes through these lessons, through these journeys, through these quick cycles, I guess you can say, at a certain rate. Learns a few things and also becomes a new person by the end of the movie. And well, not necessarily a new person, but more confident in himself at the end of the movie. And the overall message is you're never alone. You're never alone. So let's get to it. Let's break it down scene by scene, because you know there's way more messages than just you're not alone. And you know me, I got the eye for it. So I'm gonna put it down for you so you can understand and see through. All right. So the scene starts off open up with his aunt. Oh yeah, by the way, I took the mic out. We got new mics. We got new mics now. So big boy shit. Improvements already, you heard me? So let's get it. So his aunt, known as her name is Major Celeste. That's she's in the army, she's in the military, she's a space debris. What was the word that they used? Let me see. I know I wrote it down because I was like, I'm gonna need to know this. Or they track. Her job is tracking space debris and rerouting spaceships or aircrafts out of the direct line when space debris starts coming, you know, through its little storms or showers or however they reference it. Elios is a kid. He's got low self-esteem. He's pretty shy, pretty reserved. Again, like I say, he's longing for his family, so he feels lonely because he's lost both his mom and his dad. They portray this pretty early in the movie when he sees, I believe they're at some type of, I almost want to say mall / venue. I'm not really 100% sure on that. You can kind of infer what it is. Since it's military, her being military, it could kind of reference the PX. If you're in the military and you know what that is. But yeah, it's just referenced where he sees another kid and his parents and his mom and dad, you know, greeting him at the stairs, and they're all happy, and you know, he's obviously wanting, that's something that he wants. So kind of off the bat, we already see some people have what other people don't, or I should say what some people take for granted, other people are wishing that's exactly what they had, and it's not necessarily such a big dream that one wants, but just the sense of feeling not alone. You know what I'm saying? Feeling whole and complete. So he walks off. He wanders off, goes into this room. I forgot the name of the room. That's not really that big of a deal, because it was actually something that was under renovation. He walks in, looks to the right, sees this big old gold. It's almost shaped like a vinyl. So, and it's got sigils all over it, which is basically symbols, and they are so in the magic world, right? Sigils are symbols or signs that are packed with magic and a specific intention behind it. So say you want a sigil for money, you'll create whatever your little sigil looks like. You know what I'm saying? You can break it down piece by piece, letter by letter, and reshape the entire, say, intention into a symbol itself. So you take all the lines of, okay, so say if you use the number 5, you've got a line that's horizontal, you got a line that's vertical, and then you got a backward C, and it all connects to make the letter 5. You can break those up into sections and basically create a completely different design out of the number 5. And that's the intention that you set. The intention you set on it is what's supposed to be packed with it. So he sees these sigils, he sees the little disc, he plays it, and it's almost like an initiation. He pressed play, and once he presses play, there's like little stars in the floor that light up in a path. It illuminates a path. This is a sense of his initiation. This is the beginning. This is the ultimate beginning of his journey. You can see this as the beginning of someone's awakening within their own self, awakening to their own consciousness. This is kind of similar to that, which then he follows that little path. He follows that path, and the message plays into a projector, and it's basically aliens talking, or not even alien. I think it's people like explaining that there could be more life outside of Earth, outside of the Milky Way galaxy. So now he's intrigued, he's curious, he's wondering if it's real or not. And that's something that he's going to basically seek as he grows older. And then, his aunt comes in and then basically snatches him up, tell him, you can't be running off like that. Like this is all new for her as well. Keep that in mind throughout the entire movie. This is all new for her as well, being a parent and trying to balance being a parent and understanding what a kid brings and comes with, as well as still understanding how to balance work with everything going on in her life. So that's pretty much the first about 5-10 minutes. And it's crazy because those first 5-10 minutes is extremely crucial, especially the part where he becomes initiated into his own purpose, into his own mission. So let's see, make sure I'm on track. I gotta take notes. This guy put 12 pages worth of notes too, man. I thought it would have been shorter because there's a cartoon with nope. Nope. So the next scene is basically Elio goes to the beach and he draws his own sigil. This is his older version of himself. Like, so he's older now, he's probably about 2 or 3 years older than what he was at the beginning of the movie. So he's drawing all these sigils in the sand on the beach. And it's got aliens, please abduct me in the sand. That's kind of the intention that he set behind his sigil. So that's what he's shooting to go for. And he's got all these crystals within they're like almost calculated placements of the crystals. And what this gives me an idea of is crystal grids, which is something that like spiritual people in like the spiritual realm or the spiritual communities work with, and again, a crystal grid is basically crystals shaped in a sacred geometric form in order to achieve a certain intention and have a certain outcome. And based off of what it is that you're trying to achieve, whatever your intentions is, basis, or it depends on both what crystal you use, how many of that specific crystal you use, what crystals you mix together to create the energetic form and the energetic match and frequency to help you achieve this as well. And then you've got the sacred geometry, which is also basically the alignment of where the energy is going to point, where it's going to shoot, how's it going to manipulate through the field, if that makes sense. Think of it kind of like flowers blooming and they have that sacral geometric pattern. If you look close enough to the seeds that are pollinated by the bees, they all have got these medulla, is that not medulla, medallia? I don't know how to say it. I'll put a picture up like right here and you're gonna see it like right now. All right, that's what I'm talking about. It's all like sacred geometry. You could say some Fibonacci sequence, things like the flower of life and those type of things as far as sacred knowledge. So that part itself is very crucial because you've got now you see that he has now become aware of sigils. He's putting it in the sand, which sand is a very grounding element, part of earth. And he's by the water, which is significant because water is what? Currency. Water is currency. Water is consciousness, right? We talked about that a little bit. And when we was talking about and discussing F1. So water brings you clarity. Water brings you clarity. Water is conscious. Water brings you hydration. Water is a very powerful element. Think about why you always get so much clarity on the situation that you're in when you're in the water, when you take a shower. Craziest ideas, but the most creative ideas all come when you're near water, in water, taking a shower with water. Water has some type of play, some type of role in it. Think about it. I'll tell you like this. I've noticed for me in my own personal reality, every time it rains, it's because I'm having to learn how to feel a certain emotion. I need to be able to allow another emotion to feel. So for me, water it calms me, it calms everybody, right? It naturally calms your brain. So for me, I use water when I see water and it's raining. I know it's time for me to start allowing myself to feel an emotion that I may have been running or avoiding, or allowing myself to just express something and become more open because water brings openness. Water clears the way, water clears things out of its path. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it busts against a hard rock that's sitting still. Over the years, the water is breaking down that rock and it ends up creating a completely new channel. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, they come up with all these valleys and say like if there is a flood or some type of creek to be filling or flowing through what's that park, that national park, the Grand Canyon, also Yellowstone. I thought about Yellowstone too, same thing. That's how all that happens. um Water is a very 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 powerful element, and it's also the reflection of, it's an element that also helps you with reflection as well. We're gonna get into that. So he meets Bryce, who has a specific radio machine that he basically needs to be able to extend his range, his contact range, to be able to get in touch with the other beings from other galaxies. He also meets Caleb, who is Bryce's friend. He's kind of you can call him like an obstacle, but you can also call him a lesson. So Caleb is a kid that basically doesn't respect others in general, so he goes around touching people's stuff without even really asking. He's not that he's doing it purposely, but it's the fact that he's just curious. So he's just following his curiosity. He's not thinking. And he also plays victim a little bit in this situation when he failed to realize that he was the reason why the entire issue between him and Elio started in the first place, was because he started messing with Elio's stuff just because he heard things come on the radio. So the radio hits Elio's eye when they start fighting over the radio, and symbolically later on, the aunt, or his eye is going to be symbolic later on in the movie, right? Because he's going to get a not necessarily an eye patch, but it's like a little, I guess you could say like a band-aid eye. You can kind of say an eye patch, but it don't have like the typical eye patch. It's like a pirate. It's not like a pirate's eye patch. It's just kind of like something that covers it. So all while that's going on, like, so after this scene, they get to the next scene. The aunt is basically yelling at him, trying to figure out why is he out of control, or at least that's how she perceives him to be, is out of control. He's just being his normal self, she just doesn't understand how to handle it yet again. So going to the office, she pulls out this little parenting book and asks, which one of these are you? And he says, I don't know, but I think this one is you. And he points to the overwhelmed, emotion that they showing in the book. I thought that was funny. So she basically tells him to stay in the room. She puts him in this little office. I'm assuming it's her office, because they have a meeting. They have a meeting that basically another guy says he has came in contact with communication from aliens or extraterrestrials. So, and Elio ends up overhearing this as she walks out the door. So as the door shuts, he puts his little foot in there to keep it from shutting and locking. And then he sneaks out into the meeting as well. And he hides in a trash can while they're basically in the meeting. And so this is when we meet, I think his name is Mac. I don't know if it's Mac or Mac, but something with the Mac in it, right? And he basically explains he brings up the golden record. So remember the golden record that initiated Elio on his path, right? When he pressed play and all the sigils, it came up and showed them the entire thing, and they were asking if there was other life outside of the Milky Way galaxy. So he brings up this record. It's the first time that we go back to this record. And you can almost look at this a record as like Akashic records, which is kind of symbolic there that they put it on a record, because you got the Akashic records. And the Akashic records is basically just something that's believed to be the point of consciousness where all creativity and all creation is shared in one space, which we'll get to that. It'll make more sense. I can explain that a little bit better further along the podcast. So he brings it up, lets them know that America sent that satellite out in 1969, right? But the aunt she doesn't care what he's saying, even though he breaks it down and shows her that it's actually extraterrestrial communication. And this the same sound that he heard and picked up on his radio frequency is the same sound that Elio heard on the beach before Caleb tried to start fighting with him over the radio. And then they broke it in, and Elio's got this thing on his eye. So, and now that I think about that too, his eye is covered up. So he goes from two eyes to one eye. If you think about it, I always tell y'all, these two eyes don't help you see, but this one eye help you see everything you need to see. These two is just for observation. That's also symbolic. I didn't even think about that until I just started talking about his eye. So the aunt basically lets Mac finish his presentation about showing and basically giving them evidence that extraterrestrials are existing and they've picked up communication, but she's not interested because her job says space debris, not tracking space animals. So after that, she tells him to go take like a week off or something like that, basically calling him crazy. And after everyone leaves the room, Elio activates the computer and basically sends the message out to the galactics. In the message, the frequency that they use is so high to be able to send the message up to the galactic beings is that it actually shuts down the power to the whole building. Now that has multiple hidden meanings within itself. So you've got, first off, high frequency that becomes too high can basically bust the energy in the magnetic field and cause power outages. So you've got that part of it. And you've got the part where they continuously in the news address that there could be a power outage. Like, what would you do when the power grid goes down, right? I believe that's a band or something. I gotta look that up. I gotta look back into that. But I know there's a band where they keep mentioning what you're gonna do when the power grid goes down. Everybody was saying, what would be the next 9/11? It wasn't COVID, but what would they do if the power grid go down? If that's to happen in the winter or in the heat, middle of the summer, you can just imagine how that would affect a lot of people, right, with no power. You know what I'm saying? So everybody would be trying to figure everything out. It would just be total chaos if there is no power, right? And if there's no power, there's no light. The only light that we would have is the sunlight. And what that would symbolize for all of us on human planet is that would be almost like us being pushed, not necessarily out the dark or out the light into the dark, but it would be in a sense like that, because you're shutting the power down, which means you're shutting the power down, it's going dark, which is the beginning of creation. So after this scene, Elio rushes back to they get back home, him and his aunt. And Elio rushes to his room with his suitcase. He's trying to pack everything because he's getting ready to be. He knows for a fact that he's gonna go to the aliens. Like, he just know the aliens are coming now that he sent the message. While she's yelling at him, his aunt is yelling at him because she's basically just got in trouble for him sending the message, which caused the power outage and almost cost her job. So they get into this argument, and he expresses that he doesn't feel like she wants him. She says she wants him, right? And because he's family, and he says, "You're not my family," because of the lack of support of his dreams, right? That's what you can really infer. And you have to understand, when you start chasing your dreams, not even necessarily chasing them, but you start attracting your dreams, things start shifting. You have to learn to align to this person that you want to be, rather than being the person that you already are, because being the person that you already are did not get you to the person that you're trying to be. But it does serve a purpose for the person that you are trying to be. Does that make sense? So realizing that she doesn't support his dreams, you can kind of see why he wouldn't really necessarily classify her as family. It's kind of the same thing in real life. You'll have strangers who are more family to you than your own actual blood and DNA family, genetic family. So after that, she walks out. He overhears her talking to somebody on the phone, saying she didn't expect her life to be the way that it is. And you can I want to almost say Elio took this as she was unsatisfied that he was there, So that kind of hurts him internally, because he thinks that's how she feels about him. So now he really wants to actually get out of there and leave even more. She offers boarding school to him in that argument as well. So next scene is them getting to our boarding school, and you see Elio's obviously not happy about that because he doesn't want to be there. And she ends up going to talk to the principal of the school. And while that happens, Elio is approached by Bryce and Caleb, the two kids that he met on the beach. And basically they're playing revenge on him to get back at him for the trouble that they caused, but they said that he caused. So they projected onto him and played victim mentality, right? So they get to the next scene. Basically, next scene, Elio hears the noise coming from outside. He hears the other boys whispering, right? And they got this plan to put on alien mask and basically scare him, since he's always talking about aliens and trying to find aliens and stuff. Mind you, he's got his crystals on the board. He's still messing and playing with his crystals. He's still trying to get contact, even though he's at the boarding school. And so he makes the instinct. He gets a flight or fight. He chooses to fly and run and then hide. And then his aunt is, simultaneously at work. She's moving a lot of, aircraft out of the way of space debris. And then she says there's been a lot of interference for tonight. And then she's bombarded with receiving contact from the ETs. And again, the energy is so high from the extraterrestrial race when it comes through, when the message comes through, it's almost like it takes over the entire motherboard of all the electrical computers that they got going on, and basically asks, bring me to your earth leader, please. And then the frequency shuts down the entire, it's a complete blackout again, because again, like I said, the frequency is so high. And with that being, I'll give you more of a practical example, kind of practical. The higher a frequency that you try to tune your conscious body into, or your conscious mind into, there's a certain level of frequency that your body can only handle. And the think about it like this: the higher you go up in the frequency, the lighter you have to be as a human being. So all the weight of trauma, past trauma, emotional trauma, mental trauma, physical trauma, whatever trauma you got, even sexual trauma, if you don't release these traumas, you don't heal this trauma, these are examples of weights that are holding you down. And then you've got things like eating 3 times a day. That makes the body heavy. So that's another thing that's going to be holding you down. So it's just a lot of different things, different aspects that go into the lighter that you are, the more higher you can ascend in the consciousness. It's almost like this. You can think about it like this too. Moses and the burning bush. That was almost a similar sense, where the burning bush wasn't necessarily a burning bush. It was just the light in his higher mind that he's seen. He had to climb a mountain, right? A mountain representing all of his trials and tribulations, and letting go of the things from the past and things like that, to be able to access this light and this guide. So it's kind of similar to that. There we go. With the that of being frequency. Also think about it like this too. When you fast, you have a lot more clear of a mind. So you have a lot more clear of a mind. Also, going back to that Moses thing, the frequency. I do remember somebody said it was, damn, I'm gonna have to find that video. Somebody said it could also be symbolization of the burning bush being such a high frequency, right, that it actually damages the body because the frequency is so high. And if that's the case, right, I've personally experienced this myself when I've had my own experiences trying to reach and contact extraterrestrial races and beings, where for me, the thing was feedback. So I kept getting a lot of feedback in my ear that would go, it was almost like, the voltage, the sound of a voltage box outside, the little green box you used to play on as a kid outside. It's almost like hearing that. And the only difference is it goes higher and higher in the pitch, the higher and higher that you go or attempt to go in the dimension. And if you go too high, it just depends on how, I guess, pain absorbent you are. Like for me, once it hits a certain volume, it actually hurts, where I have to like plug my ear and breathe and allow myself to come back down a little bit before I try to go back up and understand the messages that are being sent to me. You know what I'm saying? So, let me see. So while that's happening, now you've got her basically trying to figure out what's going on with that. And then back to it goes back to the camp, the boarding school with Elios, and he's simultaneously running from Bryce and Caleb, who end up catching him and try to like basically punch him. They both hold his arm, and Caleb goes to punch him, and he's stopped like right before making contact with Elios' nose. And there's a light behind him, and Elio keeps trying to tell him like, there's a light behind y'all. What is that? Like, what is that? But they think that he's trying to trick them, and so he closes his eyes, trying to brace for the impact of the punch. And then he opens his eyes and realizes he didn't get hit. So when he opens his eyes, that's actually symbolic of him becoming awakened. So you've got the initiation from the way beginning of the movie, right? When we first looked and seen the sigils and the gold, and his path was illuminated. At that point, from that point into the point of him opening up his eyes again, everything was supposed to happen the way that it did. because it was preparing him for the very moment that he was now experiencing. So when he opened his eyes, that was symbolic of him having his awakening, his spiritual awakening, right? So he realizes the aliens have basically came to get him. They got the message, and he's put in a portal after that, and literally makes him leave Earth. So you can see this as ascension in consciousness, basically. And he arrives to this place, and he's immediately sampled or examined by like a little bubbly figure. I forgot the bubble figure name. It's something really simple too. Could just Google that. And the bubbly figure is talking to him, but Elios doesn't understand anything he's saying. So the bubbly figure makes like this little, his eyes light up, and then out of his body shapes like a little circle, and he passes it to Elios. When it gets to Elios, it expands into a bigger circle, and it's basically a translator. So Elios can now understand what the extraterrestrial being is saying to him, and vice versa. They can understand and communicate with each other more clearly. So this is symbolic of how you can pass your thoughts. Once you're in this higher consciousness, you can pass your thoughts along to somebody, or somebody can pass thoughts to you. This also symbolizes how people's projections are passed along people. So if you got somebody projecting fear onto you and you got this good idea, this is symbolic of how somebody can pass that fear to you, and then it ends up having you talk yourself out of the idea that you originally came up with, but it wasn't because you thought it was fearful. You accepted that the beliefs that they had and the fears that they had, and vice versa. You have a good idea, and somebody passes you, encouragement, and tells you keep going, and it tries to help you along the way. It's the same thing with raising your vibrations that way, to where you are now having confidence in believing what you just came up with, even though it sounds crazy. This also could be, I thought about it being telepathic too, almost being a symbology of telepathic communication, but I wasn't 100% sure on that, right? Because I didn't, because see, when you talk telepathically, it's not necessarily, I guess it technically is like putting both your frequencies on the same channel, just like walkie-talkies. That's really how telepathy works. Is thing about walkie-talkies, you have to be on the same frequency to be able to, talk back and forth. So it's the same thing with telepathy. You have to be on the same frequency to be able to talk back and forth. And I've experienced telepathy myself, at least, I want to say, on 4 or 5 occasions. And it's not a matter of you guessing, oh, is this me talking in my head? You will know. You will know it, you will feel it, and there will be no question about it. Because even when you do, like for me, when it first happened, I started questioning the person that I was speaking with. And I was saying, are you really reading my thoughts right now? Yes. So I would purposely think just something random, just think something out of the blue, just to see if they would pick up on what I'm thinking, or if they would feel what I'm thinking. And it happened every time. They was feeling exactly what I was feeling, or they would hear exactly what I was thinking in their own mind, and we're literally communicating with each other without opening our mouth. We're speaking straight through vibration and feeling without making a sound at all. So telepathy is real for those who don't believe it. But here's what comes with that. If you don't believe it, then that's your reality as well. Because the mind doesn't accept what people say is true or not. What the mind accepts is what you believe to be true. The subconscious mind accepts is what you believe to be true. So if you believe blue to actually be green, then that's what it is for you. No matter how many people say, that's actually blue, until you change your perception, until you change your lens on it and about it, and remove your attachment to that belief, you will believe that blue is actually green. That's kind of how this thing works with telepathy and all these other, people being psychic and things like that. Everybody's psychic. It's just a matter of you believing in yourself and being brave enough to take this path and that journey, because it's not just a matter of I'm a psychic and you just start believing it and it starts happening. No, there's phases, there's levels to it. There's levels to it. The more deeper you go, the more you start learning. You know what I'm saying? And then you start understanding things like the phrase "with great power comes great responsibility." You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily that, you're this big person full of power, but you are a person with all the power. But so is the next being, so is the next being. It's not you're better than this person, you're better than that person. There's no such thing. We're all one. We're all love. You see what I'm saying? So they start explaining where Elio gets introduced to, I guess you could call them the Council of the Galactic Federation, I believe is what they say. And basically this planet is kind of symbolic of that place in consciousness that we spoke about earlier, where I said it's the place where all creators pull their ideas from, all music artists get their lyrics from, or their beats from, producers getting their beats from, movie directors getting where they wrote the play from, and how to, you know what I'm saying? It all comes from this universal consciousness. So, and there's multiple people who would tell you, Michael Jackson said it, Eddie Murphy, I think it's Eddie Murphy or Eddie Griffin. I'm not. I get their names, their last name mixed up. But when I see their face, I know which is which. If that makes sense. So even he's spoken about it. I think 50 Cent kind of touched on it briefly. Like, there's multiple quote unquote celebrities who've actually done this, who are very, very successful, and they'll tell you the same thing. Those who are being honest, they'll tell you it's not me. It's an energy within me, or some type of consciousness, or a God. They'll call it all type of different things, but it's all the same thing. It's just like religion. You got God, Jesus Christ. You got the Jew. I forgot I think it was the God of Abraham, which is kind of the same God in Christianity. You've got the Muslims and their belief and who their follower is or who their leader is. Then you got the Buddha. You got the Judaism. Shit, we already said Jews. What's the other one, man? The top five. Regardless, you get what I'm saying. Every religion has their own God, which is all still the same God. It's just portrayed in different ways. It's the same thing with this universal consciousness. Everybody pulls from the same creative library, if you will, and they just put it down in a different way. So it's not to say, oh, Beyonce is better than Mariah Carey. They're pulling from the same fucking library. They're just doing it in their own way and explaining it in their own way. Same thing as me and you, right? One of my friends had to put this in perspective to me. You know what I'm saying? If I inhale right now, while I'm talking, the same air that I'm inhaling is the same air that you're inhaling, and you could be way out, in Australia on the other side of the world, 16, 20,000, 30,000 miles away from me. But yeah, we're still connected because we're still breathing the same air. So it's the same thing with this universal consciousness, right? So he starts getting toured around. They take him he's going through the bathroom, but the bathroom just looks like a big ass like forest full of waterfalls and stuff. It's really beautiful. And he's like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen. It's like, this is the restroom. And then they get flushed down, not necessarily the toilet, but it's like the vacuum of when you do flush a toilet. So the water starts doing the little cyclone action or whatever, and they go into the next place. And Elio tells the aliens that he always knew that they were looking for him. So then they show him the message that they received from him, and he realizes it's not the message that he sent on the beach, but it's actually the message that he sent when he was at his aunt's job. So now he realizes that they're looking for the leader of the earth, and he's so close to what he's always wanted. He's not sure what to do, whether he's contemplating basically playing the role or telling the truth. And from there, you see Kragan who is supposed to be the bad guy of the movie. So Kragan has his first scene, and he leaves in the first scene that he's in on the movie. He leaves and says, "If I can't do it, if y'all won't do it with me willingly or work with me willingly, I'll just do it by force." And this is this is a response to basically that universal consciousness and the Galactic Federation not accepting what he has to offer, and he's trying to bring chaos. He wants to bring weapons and things aboard, and they're like, we don't really need that. That's not beneficial for us. So he gets upset by that, and this kind of symbolizes humans getting frustrated. They want to do something, they try to make something happen, and instead of going naturally with the flow, they try to push, because society always says push, 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 push. You got to go faster. The faster you're going, the better you are. But really, the faster you're going, the slower you're moving, and the more destruction you're probably causing because you don't see it because you're so busy trying to move so quickly rather than moving slower. Sometimes the moving slow is actually moving faster. And let things work out organically. I'm not saying sit back and just let things unfold. Sometimes that is required, but it's a matter of discernment and knowing when to do what, when to move and when to rest, when to go into isolation and when to come out into society and share what you've learned from isolation. So it's all knowing how to play the cards. So he puts so Elio, basically everybody says that they got to talk to Kragan about not being able to join their as an ambassador for their group, for the Galactic Federation, and everybody's all scared of Kragan, and so Elio says he'll do it, and not realizing that they would believe him, he ends up accepting the job that he's kind of nervous about, because now he's got to figure out how to have confidence in his own self, and he's got to learn how to negotiate and things like that. So there's this thing called I forgot what they called it. I think it was like all the answers to the universe or something. It was always, first off, it was always in the shape of a infinity sign. So to let you know that all the answers are infinite. Everything that you want to do is infinite. That's why, like I said, Beyonce and Mariah Carey pull from the same library, but they have different sounding music. What they're talking about on a deeper level may be the complete same thing, but they go about talking about it in a different way. Same thing with religion. It's the same thing. They just talk about it in a different way. They use different stories and different testimonies. So, and because of that, because we're fractal beings of the God consciousness, experiencing itself in different ways, is let you know is the infinite amount of possibilities, the infinite amount of ways something can happen, or just knowing for the fact that you are infinite in its own being. So he calls the answers to the universe and asks how to negotiate with Kragan. And then while that happens, they go to the cloning thing, the little ET, the extraterrestrial. I don't like saying ET. The extraterrestrial that first gave Elio the translator and did all the examining on him when he first awakened tells him he needs to make a clone, otherwise Earth is going to break out in chaos, meaning like his family, his aunt, because they realize that he's not there anymore. So they make a clone, and this clone is basically sent back to Earth to take the place of Elio and play the role of Elio, while Elio is actually in the higher dimension doing his own work. Or doing higher work, I should say. So, hold on. So when it gets to the scene where he goes back, his clone self, his cloned version goes back to Earth and, resumes. He basically, the clone is the one who absorbs the when he gets beat up by Caleb, Bryce, and that other kid that the original Elio was about to experience before they froze space. Before they froze space, before they froze time. And So it goes to the scene where his aunt is picking him up and saying he was only here for a day, and he just lets people get beat up, talking to the principal. And she gets in the car and she basically starts venting to him her negative emotions. And you see him kind of like say, like, she asked him if he was okay. And he said, yeah, they beat me up, but I didn't expect that or something like that. But we had pieces. So I guess it wasn't that bad of a night. Like, he's still seeing the positive despite the fact that he got beat up or whatever. And she's kind of still focusing on it. And like the most symbolic thing that he does, he goes and starts turning the knob to the frequency of the radio on the car. And this is symbolic because it's basically him tuning out the negative energy that she's trying to share with him, because it doesn't matter to him. He's not focused on it like she is. So she's keeping herself in a state of suffering and anger because that's what she's used to. Whereas the clone, he comes from a higher dimension, so that doesn't affect him. So when she comes to him about something negative, he's literally tuning it out. And this is what we all need to learn how to do anyways. You need to learn how to tune out what doesn't matter. Is this worth your energy? Is this worth your time? Is this worth your being? Is this worth you being upset? You know? So he tunes her out and finds a channel that he likes, where he likes the song, and the song ends up being a song that she also likes too. So you've got that. So this is where his clone comes into initiation while he's working again in the other dimension. So they get back. So they change the scene, and it's back to Elio, the original Elio, who's on the other planet, basically getting into a spaceship, and he's sent out to Kraken. He's sent out Kragen. He's sent out into the open space with Kragen, who's got like his whole little mothership full of his I guess you could call them minions or whatever you want to say. And this scene itself, him going out into space, to me, it makes me think is almost like symbolizing Elio is now about to explore his emotions that he hides within himself, that he's rejected from his own self because of society. Because remember, he's a kid who's shy. He's a kid that's got low self-esteem, and just walk kind of around with desperation, right? These are things that you learn. It's not necessarily something that you're born with. You learn this based off of how people react to you when you come to them on a high vibrational level. And what happens is people again project onto you, and you start experiencing these traumas, or you have fear-based thoughts because, well, last time I said that this happened, instead of saying, well, last time this happened, but this hasn't happened, maybe I should try it again. So it's kind of like remapping, unlearning, again, part of that unlearning, that detaching, and remapping the brain, rewiring the brain to think like, hey, think like this. Like, we've already thought like that. It doesn't work. It limits us. So let's rewire it and try this pathway. That don't work. Rewire it. Try that path. That's the best thing about the brain, is you can continuously rewire it. So him being sent out into that spaceship, kind of like him getting into this journey of exploring the emotions that he's rejected from himself, or that society has rejected from him as well. And so once you get to Kragen, once he gets onto the board, he basically tells him, take me to the leader, because he doesn't know what else to tell them or ask them. And so they take him to Kragen, and this can symbolize Kragen. So I was thinking about him being the bad guy, right, in the movie. And then it kind of like, I had this thought, I was like, what if Kragen is actually Elio's shadow self? So what if Kragen is actually the emotions that Elio has rejected from his own self, or has hid from his own self? And Elio gets to play the character of himself, his higher self, while his clone self is on Earth, balancing out things in a simultaneous parallel reality. And now he gets the opportunity to explore this emotion with his shadow self, and learn his shadow self, and become one with his shadow self and his light self. And almost like them being in space was like the consciousness of him switching from experiencing to observing. So now it's like it's like, okay, so it's like this. The dreamer is observing the dream. Hold on. It's like, okay, it's like observing the dreamer that's in the dream that's having a dream. If that makes sense. So it's like you're watching. Yeah, I'll just say it like that. So it's like you're watching yourself in this life through a dream that you've already had and know. And then on top of that, so it's like you're watching yourself in this dream, you shift into that perspective. So now you go from observing, because that's the observing side, to the experiencing side. So now you're living the dream. And then, you know, when you're resting and you have dreams, this is you dreaming the dream, right? So this is symbolic of him basically shifting from the experiencing part of the dream to the observing part of the dream to give himself a chance to actually break down what's going on with himself internally. So every time they're in the complete different galaxy from Earth, that could be that I see that as a symbolic of him being in his observant consciousness. And then he just explores with his inner child, being Elio, through this realm of emotions to understand himself on a higher level. And so they begin negotiating. Kragan basically shoots. So he can't shoot without hearing the screams. They continue talking. Basically, you can infer, I believe Kragan actually says it as well. He's rejected. He's always rejected. Um, and that's almost like playing both of Elios' feelings. So you've got the part that Elio always accepts about himself, but you've also got the part that Elio's rejected in himself. And there's all parts within our own self that we've all neglected just to try to fit in or shape and mold ourselves according to society's rules. And you know what I'm saying? It's just not the best idea to do, in my opinion. And I only say it's not the best thing to do because it creates an inauthentic version of you. It's like basically forcing yourself to say yes to something that you know good and well that you don't even want to do, and not even that you don't want to do it could be that it don't go with your morals or it don't go with your values, or you just know ethically it ain't correct to do, but you still say yes, and that's only for you to, I don't know, keep a job or still keep the like same group of friends or some shit. Like maybe you got this special club of friends, like whatever the case is, it creates an inauthentic version of you. So when you allow this inauthentic version to be created and you continue living the inauthentic life, then you start attracting inauthentic experiences, inauthentic people, inauthentic friends, and all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? To where there's so much inauthenticity around you, so much fakeness around you that you are covered in illusion. So now you have to start removing the illusion piece by piece by piece by piece by acting authentic. The more authentic you act, the more you attract, the more authentic experiences you attract. And moving off authenticity helps you vibrate at a higher frequency. You understand what I'm saying? So I need to get a damn what they call that thing? A humidifier, boy. No, I need to get a humidifier. So upon him saying he feels rejected, right? Elios asked Kragan, why don't you go somewhere where people do want you? Basically, it sounds really simple. And I can't remember what Kragan's response was. But I think it was I do remember seeing like the response basically kind of symbolized that Kragan wasn't even aware that there could be other people who actually are wanting exactly what he has to offer. That's kind of just like symbolic of everybody in life, because I want to say that's how it's kind of like in the creative world, where you start a podcast, music, painting, whatever. You start something new that is kind of outside of what people expected you to do, and they won't really support it because of that, because they can only see you to a certain lens, and then you start getting support by all these other strangers and stuff, and that's what kind of keeps the momentum going for you. It's kind of similar to that, but then I also want to say it's not necessarily even restricted to the creatives, but just everybody in life. You know, even if you're not a creative person, but everybody's a creative person. They just gotta basically remember it. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta remember that you're a creative person. Elios says something about Kragen's son that triggers his ego. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I know he said he basically was like, just send him off to boarding school and get rid of him. You know, that's what I did. You know, because he asked him if he was a father and he didn't. Like I said, Elios is just playing a role now. So part of him is living inauthentically, and it triggers Kragen. So Kragen basically throws Elios in the jail cell, and this jail cell can symbolize how people try to lock your mind up. So like, yeah, symbolic of people, like how they try to lock your mind up or put you in a mind state or a set of illusions that basically force you to lock your mind up. You know, kind of the same thing where you believe or you start living inauthentically, you create illusions which lock your mind up. You start limiting your release and what you can and can't do and all of that. And when they throw him in jail, there's a girl who's in the movie theater. She's probably like 5. As that happens, she says that was supposed to happen. Like, but she's just talking. She's just talking, but at the same time, this is happening simultaneously as he gets thrown into the jail. And this is basically her saying that kind of makes me think, like I said, everything that happened from the point of his initiation to the point of his awakening was all supposed to happening. So even at that point in time, even though it was it could have been a low time period for him, like they call it peaks and valleys. It could have been like a valley type of moment for him on an emotional level, but it was supposed to happen, right? Because it had a purpose. So I thought that was kind of funny how she said that, and it was in such synchronization with the movie at that part of the movie as well. So he remembers that he's not really held down by gravity. He can, just literally command himself to not have gravity, and then he floats. So he sees that, he gets up, he escapes through a vent, and he's got this other notes that he wrote from how to negotiate on his palm, and he asks, the last thing that he's got to try is a bargaining trip. So he's like, where can I get a bargaining trip? What is he even like? I don't know what he values. And as he's asking this, he falls down a hole in the tunnels that he's climbing in, and it ends up, this is when he first meets Glorden. Glorden is Kragen's son, but he looks nothing like Kragen because Kragen has on his shell. He has on his ego shell. So he's in defense mode. But Glorden is still in his child mode. He's still in his pure mode. So you see his soft side. He's like kind of like basically a big ass caterpillar or like a larva kind of, but he shoots webs. I'm not sure what the exact creature is. It's an extraterrestrial though. So I forgot about that. Right. Um, So Glorden starts talking to him when he first catches him. Because Elios is scared because Glorden sprays him with a web and then puts him on his like spider web thing. And Elios thinks he's about to get eaten. And then they send the transmitter to he sends a translator to Glorden and to where they're again on that same frequency so they can hear each other. And Glorden tells him, oh, he was just wrapping him up because that's what his mom did to make him feel safe because he thought Elios was scared. So this goes to give you an experiment, or not an experiment, perception of how some people, do certain things, and in their mind they're doing what they think is going to help you, but in your mind it translates as something else because you're just fearful of whatever is going on. Kind of like think about like humans trying to help injured animals. When you first approach an animal and they hurt, they're not sure what to expect from you. You got good intentions, yeah, but they don't know that. So now they've got to trust you. And this is kind of the relationship that they build between Glorden and Elios. So Elios asks, "What's Glorden's name?" And Glorden says, he's never been asked what his name is. He gets excited because he's never been asked what his name is before, and he just goes down this list of names, and none of them are I don't want to say good names, but they're not desirable names that you will want to have for yourself. So he tells Elios, that made him feel special because he asked him what his name is, and then he says, "My parents don't pay attention to me, and this could be an example of how humans reject their shadow self." So if you, like I said, we're looking at it from the perception that this is in his observant mode, Elios observant mode. Everything that happens with all the extraterrestrials on the extraterrestrial planet is symbolic of him observing his inner child experience emotions that he's rejected from himself. Then you can see it as where Glorden says, "My parents don't pay attention to me," and having that example of rejection within yourself, or rejecting your shadow self, which is still a piece of yourself. Um, so they realize that Elios has escaped. The older extraterrestrials. Damn, I don't like I said, I don't even know what to call them. But the older extraterrestrials and the soldiers for Glorden's dad, because his dad is the leader of the army of the little extraterrestrial army. I don't want to say Kragans because that's just his dad's name. I don't know their exact name. I don't think they ever mentioned it either. So they go in through these tunnels, and there's a gun that's pointed at the other planet that Kragan originally was trying to become the ambassador of. And basically, this gun, to fuel it, they use lava, they use fire. And so they're in the tunnel, and the tunnels that they use to transport these fires to be able to shoot and access and weaponize the weapons that they're using to fire and activate it are the same tunnels that Elios and Glorden are in. So Elios tells Glorden he's not fireproof. Like, we've got to figure something out. So Glorden, look, Glorden says, "Get in my mouth," and he opens his mouth, and you see like three rows of just sharp teeth. So Elios is immediately like, "I'm not getting in your mouth." Like, that's like, it's just immediate fear, right? And this can so Glorden says, "Just trust me," and then he opens his mouth again, and then, like I said, it's just a row of teeth, just 3-4 rows just of straight sharp teeth. And Elios looks and sees how close the fire is approaching and the lava is approaching him, so he realizes he has no choice. He either jump in his mouth or get burned to death. So he jumps in Glorden's mouth, and this can symbolize the first time that you began integrating your shadow self with your light self and become kind of a balanced, start showing more balance, because it's Elios' inner child, his light self, entering into his rejected self for protection. So he's using his shadow self to protect his light self. So that's symbolic, where, like I said, you have to find that balance. That's why it's a good idea to just write down something like a T chart, where you label the past self left side, higher self right side, and then from there, list all the cons and pros that was in your that you had when you was in your past self, how you used to act, and then write all the pros and cons that you have currently when you started trying to actually live from your higher self, when you started trying to learn something every day, when you started moving from the perspective of love and not from the perspective of fear and hate. And after that, I lost my spot. Where's it at? Okay, so after that, they Elios has the idea to use Glorden. He has the idea to use Glorden as his bargaining chip. So he negotiates with Kragan and his shadow self to say, like, we've got your kid. So if you got your kid, just leave and then you can get your kid back safely. So Kragan kind of agrees to this, but he knows he has like a plan, like a hidden motive plan behind it. Elios and Glorden start kind of spending time together on the other planet while Kragan is kind of assembling his army, preparing for like kind of an invasion. And they get to the scene where they're in the water or by the water, they're sitting like on this bridge, and Elios starts opening up to Glorden about, you know, his own pain and what he feels, and sometimes he wonders what if like he's not right, or what if no one likes him, something like that. And Glorden says, well, he likes Elio and he seems fine to him. And this symbolizes that those who love you, that agree with you, you could. So, okay, so you've got people who tell you they love you the way they are, which is good, right? This is supporting love for you. But sometimes it also, I can see it from the perspective also where that these same people are the same ones that may keep you comfortable. They may not push you outside of that comfort zone. So it's kind of understanding, knowing like when to be around the people who love you and support what you do and say yes to everything that you say. Also having people around you who do love you enough to push you outside of your comfort zone so that you're not becoming stagnant within your growth, you know, like challenging you. So he Glorden starts crying and says he doesn't want to become the warrior that his dad is basically pushing to make him become. And he starts crying, and Elios says, well, you don't have to do it. And so he says, how can I do that? And he threw this piece of, I don't know what that was, like an acorn or a leaf or something, into the water, and it ripples and then it starts to slow down into where Elio looks. He's looking and realizes that he sees a reflection of Glorden. And so he says, that's what we could do. We could do that. So he has the idea of cloning Glorden, right? This is when that water comes back and brings you clarity, brings you answers, because water is conscious. So that's the whole purpose of you staying hydrated, because your brain is a high amount of water. I'm not going to tell you the percentage because I don't know. I was going to shoot and estimate a percentage, but I do know the brain has a high content amount of content of water within it. And if you expect clarity and you want to have clear thought, then you might want to start hydrating as well, because just tell me, how can you do that when you don't have no water where it's supposed to be water at? That's kind of like trying to go fishing in a dried out lake. It's not going to work. So staying hydrated is, on a psychological level, it's to help you with the mental clarity as well, you know, on top of keeping just the body hydrated, because it keeps the body cool and all the other functions that it does for the body on the physical level. So when you hydrating is benefiting you on all three levels: your physical level, the mental level, and the psychological level, or the spiritual level. So they go and make a clone of Glorden. They have an entire little ceremony / ritual where the ETs, similar to Glorden and his dad's army and his dad himself, to where they initiate him into the suit, and they start walking away after the initiation. And Glorden, basically the clone, at least the clone of Glorden, says, yeah, I can't wait to like take over the entire galaxy and all this and that. And the dad recognizes it within like 30 seconds of them about to leave the planet, and realizes like that's not his son. Immediately he knows it's not his son. So he then gets mad and asks, where's his son at? And that's when they use the pink extraterrestrial. She can read minds. So she's basically forced to read Elios' mind and give Kragan the answer. Let's get to it. We back. All right. So phone died on me in the middle of the recording. That's cool. Took a little quick break. And we back. So we left off with. Let me see something. Let me see where we left off at. We was on page 8 out of the 12 notes. Yeah. So we're the part basically where Glorden, the son of Kragan, is basically telling Elio that he loves him the way that he is, and that's symbolizing those who love you for who you are, will show their support, and that you're not alone. This also could question. I had a question and perception of whether the people that love you and agree with you majority of the time, if they're there to just, if they challenging you to keep you from stepping out of your comfort zone because you're used to getting that love and support from them, or if their love and support helps you to step out of your comfort zone even more, So you can talk about the clone. They recognized that the dad recognized the clone immediately before they even stepped back onto their ship. Elio tells Glorden he'll be right back when he goes to take the clone to them. So yeah, we're pretty much back on schedule, back on up to date. So next, not only does the father recognize that his son is the clone and not his real son, the same thing is also happening with his aunt, Elio's aunt. She recognizes something is off about the clone of Elio. He's too loving, supporting. He's not the same Elio. You would just know. You just know. You could just feel it. So she hugs him, tells him good night, and basically gets a piece of his hair without him knowing, so she can look at it through the microscope and basically see what she's messing with, working with, see what it is, just see if the genes really line up with the original DNA of Elio. And that's when she first witnesses seeing her hair, or his hair technically, go from the microscope, under the microscope, it finds its way back to its source, which is the hair on top of Elio's clone's head. And when it connects back into his head, his whole body kind of does a holographic type of thing. Like, it's kind of as if you were to touch me and my body kind of absorbs your touch rather than it stopping right here because it's something solid, right? It's absorbs the touch like jello, and then it becomes kind of holographic. So she witnesses seeing the holographic form of Elio and realizes it confirms what her suspicions were about him being a clone or being not the real Elio. So when she realized that, he wakes up, and then from there he basically says, okay, we have something we have to talk about. And then he brings her up to speed on what's going on with the real Elio and what he's doing in the other world of consciousness. So yeah, that's her experience. This is all happening simultaneously as the dad realizes that's not his real son either. So, and this also lets you know the ritual that the Kragan did for his son. Like I mentioned earlier, their suits are armors. They're suits of armor. They're just recognizing as a shell because they're super duper soft. But they get the mask that they give off is that they're extremely tough and this and that, but they're really soft and nurturing. And they're just trying to they think that's the best way to protect themselves. And they forget that to an extent, they forget you don't really need, there's more power in being vulnerable and open than there is in being defensive and secretive. Oh, that should make sense. You should grasp that. If there's any questions on that, just drop that in the comments. Really. So yeah. And what happens is once they realize it's not Glorden, it's just a clone. Glorden hears the army looking for him, and he accidentally starts up the ship, and the ship asks, do you want to take the trip to Earth? And it gives you the options of confirm or decline, and he says confirm, but like in a question mark, because he doesn't know what confirm means. And so when he's asking in the question, it confirms it and says, okay, great, let's go to Earth. And it basically, this kind of, to me, I seen it as his shadow self, Elios' shadow self, being selected and projected onto the Earth realm. So now he's going from his observant mode to his shadow self mode while he's still observing all of the other emotions within his self. So the clone self is experiencing, or will experience, the shadow self, which is represented by Glorden. This is also could be symbolic of like the ego just being on the planet itself. And then the war breaks out. It's not even a war because they're not fighting back. So it's kind of just like, I guess you can say, a battle where Kraken just kind of, or Kragan just basically takes ownership of the little spot in an authoritative way, in a totalitarian way. And they kick Elio out of the ambassadors for basically lying. And the rep, this basically shows him, because they open a portal back to Earth before they kick him out. So when they kick him out, he's falling from the portal. If you look, as he's falling, from the portal, he's looking at the portal as he's falling, right? So, and it looks like the portal is lit. It looks like fire. It looks like light as he falls into the darkness of the seas, right? So as he falls into the darkness of the sea, what we talk about water representing the emotions as well. So you're falling into the depths of his emotions. He's now learning other emotions to feel. He's learned how to integrate his feelings of being rejected, right? So now something has happened where he has been kicked out of the light. He's been kicked out of the happy, joyful state of mind and the feelings, and kicked into the darkness of the emotions and the sea. So immediately, once he's washed upon shore, what is he feeling? He's feeling depression. He's feeling disappointment. He's feeling sad. He's feeling lonely again. He's feeling all of these sad emotions now that he has to know and learn how to process and integrate and accept that they're a part of him as well. So that's kind of what that represents, where he's getting kicked out of the portal back into the lower dimension, the lower realm. You can also see it as like, once you've reached the zenith, you have to, it's a quote, it's kind of like, at the peak of every mountain is the beginning of the next mountain. So it's kind of like him getting kicked out was the peak, but also the beginning of his next obstacle he's got to overcome in the movie. So, and then that's when you first see his aunt she's now putting sigils and drawing sigils in the sand. And now she's trying to ask for the aliens to bring back Elio. And she's got all the crystals set up on a crystal grid as well. And it's almost as if she's like, her journey led her down understanding and believing the extraterrestrial race, because she was having to investigate the clone of her son, or not her son, her nephew. And Elio sees this, and he sees she's kind of acting like how he was, and then she kind of vents and says she feels lonely and things like this, and she says, you wouldn't understand. And he says, actually I do, right? Because this is the exact life that he was living. So now he understands how to live that and how to get through that. He can actually help her get through it. So the only thing that she says she wants, because I think he said he thought he didn't want her, or she didn't want him. So she tells him the only thing that she wants is you, which is symbolic, because even though she's saying the only thing I want is you, you have to remember she is talking to herself. Stay with me. Stay with me. She's talking to herself. She's talking to herself. Elio is talking to himself. but they're talking to each other through self. Does that? I hope that makes sense. It's like, okay, talk to yourself in the mirror. Think about it like that. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Only when you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing a different version. Let's say you see the female version of yourself, but you're still talking to this female version of yourself. That's the same thing. That's all it is. Is we all the same. We are reflections of each other. So when she says the only thing she wants is you, this is symbolic because the only thing that you ever want in this life is you. The only thing you're trying to get to is you. See, a lot of people put what do they call it? Destination obsession or something about it, something like that. It's like where they're like, oh, I gotta have this car, or I gotta have a certain amount of money, or I've gotta have a certain type of house, or my wife, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my husband, whatever. They gotta look a certain type of way. They gotta do certain things for me to think that they're actually meant for me to date or whatever, or marry, whatever the case is, right? I gotta have this certain pet, da 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 da. Is we like humans run around putting emphasis on all these external things to realize, only to realize that it's not that they want the external thing. They just think that that external thing that they want is something that's going to bring them closer to their self. But you have to realize it's not going to bring you no closer to yourself. The more that you keep putting emphasis on trying to find something external of yourself, it doesn't make sense. You can't find what you're looking for inside on the outside until you go inside and then allow it to project outside. I know that made sense. I know that shit made sense because I damn near wanted to say that was a bar. I know that made sense. So look, yeah, replay that if you got to, my nigga. Do what you got. Do what you got to do. So that's what that symbolizes when she says, the only thing that I want is you." So the clone comes back from looking for something for her and basically warns him that the base is something's happening at the army base. This is basically when Glorden arrives in the spaceship, and they're trying to investigate and figure out what Glorden is. They don't know what Glorden is, and when I say they, I mean the humans, the people in the army and on the army base. But Elio knows who he is. The clone knows who he is, and then Elio tells his aunt who Glorden is, and she sees it for herself. You know. So they use the clone of Elio to basically distract them, to distract the guards at the door so they can get in. And basically the clone Elio kind of what you call that, self-destructs himself and kind of lets himself melt into like a blob. This kind of symbolized with the clone of Elio. So you got the real Elio and you got the clone of Elio. It's can symbolize basically letting your old self die to be able to step into the new version of yourself. So the entire yeah. So they end up getting in there. They find Glorden. Glorden's is on Earth. Being on Earth is too cold for Glorden. So this is causing problems with him on a health thought concept. I don't know what I wanted to say. That's not what I wanted to say. I try to clean it up, but that's basically health wise is challenging him and his body. His body's not meant to be on Earth. So because it's not meant to be on Earth and it's not from Earth, and it's not able to adapt to Earth at the moment. So he's extremely cold. Also, I'm gonna let us get into that. I'm gonna let us get into that. I ain't gonna get ahead of myself. So they're going back. They start up. Elio tries to keep Glorden warm. They start up the spaceship again, and then now they're going back. They're trying to shoot back into the other galaxy, right? The other dimension. So now the observer has experienced. Now the experiencer or the dreamer is now trying to get back to the observer. You know what I'm saying? So they can evaluate and learn what they need to learn, transmute and alchemize what needs to be transmuted and alchemized. and they start running into space debris, in which Elio reaches out to somebody through the radio, and it ends up being Bryce who answers, which is a symbolism of how having another example of someone that you can learn to become yourself, your higher self. So this is like having examples of people who are already doing what you want to do, and you kind of just not necessarily following them, but learning how to observe how they do what they do and learn what they do, so you can learn how to do what you do or what you're attempting to do based off of the experience that they've had, because they're successful, right? If they weren't successful with it, then you wouldn't be taking knowledge from it. Even if they were unsuccessful, you could still get some type of knowledge out of it. You can figure out what they did that made them fail, so you don't do it. So either way, it's still there to basically help you become the best version of you. So that's what Bryce symbolizes, answering out to Elio when he's calling for help to figure out who to call to be able to get somebody to help them to get his aunt to be able to estimate the projectiles of the space debris coming at the spaceship. That's when Bryce ended up calling, what was it, mailman or mealman from the beginning of the movie, when they say he first originally had contact with space aliens, the guy who tried to originally tell them. So that guy that they made take a week off, they end up getting in contact with him, and this is going to be the guide that helps them dodge the space debris. So they continue getting through the space debris. They're able to, calculate it, pinpoint it, and know if they need to pull up, pull down, go left, go right, or whatever, so that they don't get knocked out of the air by space debris. And as they're ascending, this is symbolic too, because as they're ascending away from Earth, right, the frequency is starting to shift, right? Their frequency is raising because they're going higher up. They're ascending into a higher dimension while leaving behind like the lower dimension. And you hear like mailman, something like that. The guy who's guiding them to dodge all the space rocks, he says, stay on this frequency. Just stay on this frequency, like you're close. I hear you like kind of changing out of frequencies, so just stay on this frequency. And he says that to basically keep them so he can stay in contact with them and continue guiding them. But what's really going on under the surface is, as they're ascending, you're changing frequency. So you're like, it's kind of like you got this person here, they don't want to do nothing. Not even that they don't want to do anything, but their journey has taken them to where they have taken them. They've hit their peak in their journey. Your journey may make you ascend on a higher level. So you have to ascend higher and leave certain things behind. And when you ascend to higher areas and things like that, then you are now leaving that old frequency or previous frequency for a higher frequency. And in this case, this is when you start experiencing conflict with some people, but then at the same time you start experiencing people who are on the same frequency as you, and the energy becomes even higher from that. So it's just kind of like certain people, when they tell you everybody can't come when it's time for you to go, like this is kind of the prime example of that. Like, yes, all these people are helping. Yes, Bryce was helping. Yes, Moment was helping. You know what I'm saying? The army was not really helping. It was being more secretive, but whatever you want to call that. And then you've got, who are the only people who can actually come and see this? That it's only Elio Glorden, because that's who they got to get back, and then the aunt. You see what I'm saying? So, and only it's it's just basically, once you raise your frequency, you gotta leave some people behind. And it's, as much as I would love to bring people with me, I know for a fact it can't happen because of whether it's the lack of their perception, the fact that they don't want to change, the fact that they're afraid to change. And then you got some people who are just secretly envious of you, some people who are secretly competing with you, and some people who are just watching and observing you so they can copy the way that you be you and try to basically sell an off market version of you through their own perception or something like that, trying to copy the style or whatever. Some, what I'm saying? Simple things like that. So when they regain signal, right, I'm trying to remember if I don't know if it goes dark for a little bit after one of the space rocks hits them because they lose signal. I want to say if they do go dark and then it shows eyes opening again, that symbolizes another awakening, and that would be Elios' second awakening. So you could say the dark night of the soul, right? And that would be his aunt's first awakening. So they experience awakening together simultaneously. They're just at different levels of awakening. Elios on his second one, his aunt's on his first or her first awakening. But like I said, I don't remember if there was a part where it got dark because of the space rocks. Like it hit the spaceship and like just the screen goes black and then it comes back and it shows you everything. Or if it was like when it does come back, if his eyes open and it's showing you. Either way, it's still an awakening. So when it comes back though, whenever the light does come back on, they regain signal, and it's from people from all over the world. You got people calling out from Turkey, Italy, France, Spain, just all over the world, giving her, pinpoints like, hey, space debris is here, space debris is there, and she's clocking it in, making sure that everything's good, and they're dodging all the debris. Once they clear all the debris, the spaceship says the path has been cleared. So what this symbolized to me was in that journey, in the journey of ascension, they had basically cleared all of this space debris. Every space debris that they cleared symbolized some type of obstacle that was supposed to hold them back. See, what does this look like in the practical? This could be anything from trauma, mental trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, sexual trauma, to your own fears, your fears holding you back, your old habits holding you back, your belief and your world views and how that's holding you back, the lack of knowledge you may have holding you back. These are all things that can interfere with your journey and your process along the ascension process and along the journey of growing into your higher self and growing into your more calm self, your more aware self. All this debris symbolizes all the rocks people try to throw at you while you start building yourself up. And you take the rocks and basically just start building your castle with it. So once they've cleared that, the spaceship says path has been cleared. From here on out, you're good. The hard part's over with. Dang. Hey, dang. I'm hearing that. They get back to the alien planet, and Gragan sees his son on the ground, Glorden. He sees his son basically has. I feel like I don't want to say his son died, but his son was so cold that maybe he became unconscious for a little bit before he regained consciousness from warmth. So Gragan sees his son pretty much almost dead and rips off his shell. Like he breaks out his shell, revealing his soft side. This is the first time that we see his soft side the entire movie. And from there, he warms and cuddles Kragan to bring him back to life. I mean, cuddles Glorden to bring his son back to life. So Glorden represents being left out in the cold. These are the emotions that you leave out in the cold. And Glorden being a representation of his dad, Kragan, who was rejected, is kind of similar. Right? Just like baby rejection. Kragan expresses his love for Glorden for the first time, and Elios is presented with the ambassador badge. The first time they took the badge away right before they kicked him out of the dimension because he had started chaos. And then he came back. When he came back trying to save Glorden. And because of this and him sacrificing himself to save the life of another, they then offered him the badge back, and bring him peace because he brought peace back as well. So with that, he starts celebrating. He's, celebrating with all the extraterrestrials, having fun, smiling, happy, feeling like he belongs. And he looks back and sees his aunt, and he sees that his aunt is sad. And at this point in time, this is when you realize that you have to leave parts of yourself in the lower world, in the lower realm, in the lower dimensions, to continue staying in your higher self, in your higher dimensions. So, for example, the habits you had in the lower dimensions, that doesn't benefit you when you're in the higher dimensions. That benefited you for when you're in the lower dimensions. That helped you survive during that. So now, if you're going to a higher dimension, now you've got to adapt to that. Or if you don't have to adapt to that, maybe you've already been prepared for that based off of what you've experienced on the journey and the process through getting from the lower dimension to the higher dimension, jumping across the space rocks and space debris and dodging all of that. All right. So he realizes he has to leave his old life in order to sustain a new one. He realizes he has to leave his old attachments. So he decides to give Earth a chance with his aunt. This is kind of an attachment thing. This is how I see it. So humans, remember when we spoke about attachment and we were talking about F1, right? Humans, the only thing that keeps humans need to learn to detach. How about that? We'll say it like that. Humans need to learn to detach. Sometimes attachments is what is like the only thing that keeps the human from ascending to the next level. It's because of an attachment to a person, a thing, a place, a location, a thought, a belief, or whatever. This comes with that's space debris. You can count that as space debris, attachments, because you have to know when it's time to let go. Kind of think about Finding Nemo when they was hanging on to the whale, and remember when the whale ate Dory and Marlin, and then the whale was about to shoot them out of his blowhole, and when they pulled back, she's holding on, and Marlin's holding on, and she says, okay, and what are you doing? He says, it's time to let go. And she says, how do you know that's what he says? And she says, I don't, but you just gotta trust it. And then he lets go, and then they get blown back out into the ocean. You know what I'm saying? It's nowhere near as bad as they think it is. It's the same thing. You just gotta let go of the attachments and trust. You know what I'm saying? And just trust. So they end the movie by saying, okay, bye, I love you. Because that's how Elios sent the message. He ended it with, okay, bye, I love you. And so like they think that's an Earth custom, which part of it is, yeah. Part of it is, it made me kind of think about how many times I personally say, okay, bye, I love you, the same exact way that they were saying it. So it could actually be like I guess an earthly custom. And then he gets sent back to Earth with a new understanding of life. And not only his life, but his emotions and his shadow self, the darker self. You could tell he's a lot more confident at the end of the movie. And the overall message, like I said, of this entire movie was that you're never alone. So if you noticed, Gordon and Elio got along together because they both felt alone. Right? Gordon had his whole trauma and all the trauma that he experienced. Elio had his own trauma and everything that he was experiencing within his own life. Then you've got all these other things stacking on top of each other. Rejection. He's learning how to accept rejection and be okay with rejection, because he gets rejected out of the same very place that he was wishing to get to his entire life. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, like I say, man, I definitely recommend it. I'm sure if you're watching this, you already watched it. I hope you already watched it. If you didn't watch it and you watched this video first, hey, I told you not to watch this until you watch this. So like I said, we're gonna spoil it. That's the whole purpose of this channel, is to bring the truth to you, to unveil the truth to you, so you see what's really going on behind the scenes of these movies. A lot of these movies, like I said, is pulled from that universal consciousness. It's created from the same universal consciousness that all the favorite songs that you listen to are created from. If you make music, then it's made from the same consciousness that you use to make your own songs. Regardless, it's all the same. If I'm inhaling right now, I'm breathing in the same air that you breathing in while you listening to this video. This is what interconnects us. You know what I'm saying? We're all connected, but nobody is alone. Don't ever think that you're alone. And further, I like to go further. I posted on TikTok a couple of days ago. The message was basically saying, if you think you have it bad, no. If you have it bad, the ones who have it bad and are continuing to stay positive about it, those are the ones who are actually strong. Those are the ones who are actually demonstrating power, you know, because anybody can be positive when everything's going right. But if you're doing it while everything is supposedly going wrong, you know, everything's not really going wrong, it's really going right. And it's preparing you for, you know, the joy of it is showing you the strength within yourself. So I was taking that somewhere and then I got lost in my thoughts, but it's all good. I'm sure you got the message. If you didn't get it, shit, fuck, text me. Type shit. Like I said, text me. Don't text me because I don't even like when random people text me. But you know what I mean? Like comment on the in the comments. Email me. I don't think I've been putting my email in the chat. My bad. DM me, Instagram, whatever way that you feel like is best to reach me. Hey, that's it. Y'all make sure y'all tap in with Elios. Like I said, I'm gonna probably have to watch it a couple more times myself just to, because I'm sure it's gonna be a lot. I feel like there's a lot more information in that movie that I only grasped a little bit because it was just so many. I'm not gonna tell like lie to you, but like the amount of notes that I took for this movie was, I was literally having to type like this. I wasn't even watching the movie because it was like the moment that I understood it and got the download, then it was like boom, another one, boom, another. Like they just had them stacked, just back to back to back. Like it's just gym after gym after gym after gym after gym in this movie. So just be aware. You know what I'm saying? Watch it with your third eye and tap in with it. You know what I'm saying? Other than that, we're gonna see y'all in the next episode. I don't know what movie's next. You know what I'm saying? Y'all have any suggestions on movies? Y'all want me to break it down? Like I said, put it in the comments. I'll break those movies down for you by myself and or watch it myself and then break it down for you and let you know what I see from it and how I'm seeing the veil and what I perceive from it. And we go from there and break it down for you to have that better understanding of whatever movie that is that you feel like you want to have a breakdown of. Other than that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Y'all stay cool. Y'all stay grounded. Y'all stay beautiful. You hear me? It's about to get majestic.
Back to the past, I had to close those chapters. Ghost in, burn my boots, big shoes, all wins, don't lose, just choose. And watch the magic light up your fuse. Trust in yourself, boy, I give you cahoots. Plant my feet, let me ground.